Well, the White House this morning issued basically an ultimatum. This is from a White House official. Quote, helping Thomas Massie and liberal Democrats with their attention-seeking while the DOJ is fully supporting a more comprehensive file release effort from the Oversight Committee would be viewed as a very hostile act to the administration. So here's how this works. Discharge petitions are a special kind of magic on Capitol Hill. Basically, whenever any kind of legislation, including a piece of legislation that says that the Department of Justice must hand the files, the Epstein files, off to the public, or in this case, I believe, off to the Oversight Committee, presumably to be made public. Any piece of legislation goes through a pretty straightforward process. First, it's introduced in committee. The committee debates it. If the whole committee, if the majority of the members of the committee say, yeah, this is a good piece of legislation, they pass it out of committee, where it goes to the Speaker of the House office, the office of the Speaker of the House, in this case, Mike Johnson. And Mike Johnson decides at that point whether to hold a vote or even a debate on that particular piece of legislation. And he can procrastinate as long as he wants. He can just have it sit on his desk for a year, or he can just move it right along, pretty much whatever he wants. He can just refuse to ever bring it forward, which is what's been happening with this request, this legislation to release all these files. So the only way around the Speaker, who can act as, as not just a pebble in the stream, but basically a dam across the stream, the only way around the Speaker is with this magical thing called a discharge petition. A discharge petition requires a majority of the House of Representatives to vote for it. It only requires a simple majority. And what it does is it says there will be a vote on this, whether the Speaker wants there to be a vote or not. And obviously Mike Johnson doesn't want there to be a vote. So now you've got 222 Democrats. All the Democrats have said, yeah, we're on board with this. Thomas Massie, the Republican from Kentucky, says that he's on board with it. Lauren Boebert, the Republican from Colorado, says she's on board with it. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who was getting lots of props on this from Congressman Khanna this morning, she's on it. And Nancy Mace is apparently on it, the Republican from South Carolina. Now, there was talk of Representative Luna, for example, some of the other female Republicans being on this thing. But apparently they've all decided that being on Donald Trump's good side is more important than, justice or, the American people finding out what happened or, any of that sort of thing, with regard to all this. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson, this is crazy. He held a caucus meeting this morning, all the Republicans from the House of Representatives, and he said, don't vote for the discharge petition because we're going to have a vote this afternoon on essentially the same thing. Now, the legislation that they're going to vote on this afternoon that Mike Johnson says is the same thing as the discharge petition, this legislation that they're going to vote on actually is non-binding, which means it does not compel anybody to do anything. It's simply a sense of the House resolution, essentially. We believe. And it asks the Justice Department to release appropriate information to the House Oversight Committee. According to Punchbowl News' Jake Sherman, quote, Massie, Thomas Massie, the guy who's co-author of the discharge petition along with Ro Khanna, quote, said the Speaker's presentation was unfair and inaccurate and today's resolution is not as strong as his discharge petition. Gee, you think? And then, of course, yesterday there was an attempt by Mike Johnson et al. To get ahead of this by releasing a bunch of these files. And, 33,000 pages of documents. that were given to the committee yesterday by the Department of Justice, by Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, basically, and Todd Blanche. And it turns out that with the exception of a few pages that were so heavily redacted that they were meaningless, this was all stuff that was already in the public domain. It was already out there. So how do you think this is going to play out? What's your sense of where this is going to go? I am thinking that what we are looking at could be the beginning of basically a new Me Too movement, or even the revival of the Me Too movement. That this is the moment when, I mean, if it's true that there were more than 1,000 women who were abused by Jeffrey Epstein, and there's every reason to believe that that's the case. I mean, he did this for several decades. It may go all the way back to when Bill Barr's father got him a job as a teacher in a high school, in a private high school. I mean, that might be when he started. So it might be like 4 or 5 decades that he was doing this. I mean, even 1 decade, right? 10 years. If he's abusing 50 or 100 women a year, one every 2-3 days, that could be thousands of women. And it may be more than that. And several of these women testified that he made it clear to them that once they were no longer, 13, 14, 15 years old, he wasn't interested. They had aged out. And then their job was to recruit their friends to come in. So, wild stuff.
Kick the press out of the press conference.
What? Oh, interesting. Donald Trump apparently just kicked the press out of his press conference. That's strange stuff. All right, let's take a break here, and I want to hear from you. I'm curious, if you watched the coverage this morning, which is now pretty much over. What do you think? How do you think that this is going to play out? Is Trump going to survive this? I'm skeptical that he's going to make it through. I'm also skeptical that he's going to cave, because he knows that it'll be, the end of him.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Pam Bondi has already had over according to press reports, over 1,000 FBI agents redacting Trump's name from the reports.